Stop trusting your legs. I mean that. If you're over 60, the muscles carrying you from your bed to your bathroom, from your car to your front door, are quietly losing the battle right now, and almost nobody is telling you the truth about why or what actually reverses it. Everyone wants to talk about your heart, your cholesterol, your blood pressure. Almost nobody wants to talk about the fact that leg strength, not heart health, is the single strongest predictor of how many more independent years you have left. And I don't say that lightly. A widely cited long-term mobility study following adults over the age of 70 found that those in the weakest quarter for lower body strength were roughly 3.5 times more likely to require assisted living within 5 years than those in the strongest quarter. 3.5 times. Not because their hearts failed, not because of a stroke, because their legs simply stopped being able to do the job. I'm Dr. Jason Fung, and I've spent close to 2 decades treating patients in exactly this stage of life, watching this exact pattern play out again and again. And I'm going to show you the 6 foods that, when used correctly, can start rebuilding that strength faster than almost anyone expects. Number 2 on this list surprises almost every patient I share it with, because it's sitting in most of your kitchens right now, completely ignored. But before we get into it, I want to ask you something, because I read every single comment on these videos. Every one. Tell me your age and tell me this. What's the one activity, gardening, playing with a grandchild, simply walking to the mailbox without holding on to something, that you most want your legs to keep letting you do? I want to know. Write it below. It genuinely shapes what I bring to you in future videos. Now, let's talk about why this happens in the first place, because understanding the mechanism is what makes the solution actually stick. After the age of 75, the body loses close to 35% of its natural ability to convert dietary protein into usable muscle tissue. Researchers call this anabolic resistance. Think of it like an aging delivery truck. In your 30s, that truck could haul a full load of protein straight to the muscle building factory with almost no waste. By your 70s, the same truck is losing 1/3 of its cargo along the way: road tolls, detours, breakdowns. The raw material shows up, but the factory never gets enough to keep the muscle production line running. That's why so many seniors eat what looks like a perfectly reasonable amount of protein and still lose muscle every single year. It's not that you're not trying, it's that your body needs more, and it needs specific kinds, timed specific ways. That's exactly what this list is built around. Let's start at number 6 and count down to the single most powerful food for rebuilding leg strength after 60. Number 6 is wild-caught salmon. And I want to start here because most people think of it purely as a heart food, when its real power for aging legs lies somewhere else entirely. Inflammation. Chronic, low-grade inflammation is one of the quiet reasons your muscles stop responding to exercise and protein the way they used to. Some researchers refer to this as inflammaging, the slow inflammatory fire that burns beneath the surface as we age, gradually interfering with the signals that tell your muscle fibers to grow and repair. Salmon is rich in omega-3 fatty acids, specifically EPA and DHA, which have been shown in multiple trials to blunt that inflammatory response and, remarkably, to improve the muscle building signal in response to protein intake in adults over 60 by a meaningful margin. Some studies put the improvement in the range of 20%. For aging bodies specifically, this matters because it's addressing 2 problems at once: feeding the muscle and cooling the fire that's been preventing that fuel from being used properly. I recommend 2 servings a week. about 4 ounces each, prepared simply baked or pan-seared in olive oil, never deep-fried, since high heat frying can degrade some of those fragile omega-3 fats. For timing, eating salmon within a couple of hours of your daily walk or light resistance work seems to amplify the anti-inflammatory benefit right when your muscles are primed to use it. And for a synergy tip, pair your salmon with a source of vitamin D, like a few minutes of sunlight beforehand or a fortified food alongside it, because vitamin D and omega-3s appear to work through overlapping pathways to support muscle protein synthesis, and having both on board multiplies the benefit rather than simply adding to it. I think of my patient Harold, 78, from a small town outside Tulsa. Harold came to me using a cane for the first time in his life, frustrated, a little embarrassed, telling me he felt like his body had betrayed him overnight. We didn't do anything dramatic. We simply got salmon onto his plate twice a week, alongside a few of the other foods I'm about to walk you through. 4 months later, Harold walked into my office without the cane. And what stuck with me wasn't the cane being gone. It was him telling me he'd gotten back down on the floor to help his granddaughter with a puzzle and gotten back up without using his hands. That's the kind of change we're talking about. Number 5 is Greek yogurt. And specifically, I mean the thick, strained kind, because the difference in protein density matters enormously here. A single cup can deliver close to 20 grams of high-quality protein. But what makes it special for aging muscle isn't just the quantity, it's that it's rich in leucine, an amino acid that functions almost like a light switch for muscle building. Leucine is one of the key triggers for something called the mTOR pathway, which you can think of as the foreman on a construction site. Without enough leucine reaching that foreman, the construction crew, your muscle building machinery, simply stands around waiting for instructions, even if there are plenty of building materials sitting in the truck. Research on older adults has repeatedly shown that you need a higher leucine threshold to flip the switch than younger adults do, which is exactly why casual protein intake often isn't enough after 60. Greek yogurt gets you there efficiently, and it's also a fermented food, meaning it supports gut bacteria that some newer research links to reduced systemic inflammation and even improved nutrient absorption overall. I recommend a cup of plain Greek yogurt, unsweetened to avoid the added sugar found in flavored versions, ideally in the morning or right after light activity. For a synergy tip, stir in a tablespoon of ground flaxseed or chia. The added fiber slows digestion just enough to extend that amino acid release, giving your muscles a longer window to absorb what they need instead of a single quick spike. Number 4 is lentils. And I know what you might be thinking. A plant food this far up a muscle strength list seems unusual, but stay with me. Lentils are unusually rich in an amino acid called arginine, which plays a critical role in blood flow. And blood flow to aging leg muscles is a much bigger issue than most people realize. As we age, the small blood vessels feeding our muscles become less responsive, delivering oxygen and nutrients less efficiently. Almost like garden hoses that have gotten a little kinked and stiff over the decades. Arginine helps the body produce nitric oxide, which relaxes those vessels and improves circulation, meaning more of the protein and nutrients you're eating actually reach the muscle fibers that need them. One trial in older adults found that boosting nitric oxide availability through diet improved walking endurance and lower limb function measurably over a period of just 12 weeks. Lentils also bring a substantial dose of fiber and slow-release carbohydrate energy, which matters because your leg muscles need consistent fuel, not sugar spikes and crashes, to perform reliably throughout the day. I recommend about 3/4 of a cup of cooked lentils 4 to 5 times a week, prepared in soups or alongside vegetables rather than as an isolated side dish. For a synergy tip, pair lentils with a source of vitamin C, like bell peppers or tomatoes, because vitamin C dramatically improves the absorption of the plant-based iron lentils also contain. And iron is essential for the oxygen carrying capacity your muscles depend on during any kind of sustained activity, even something as simple as a walk around the block. Now, before we move into the final 3, the ones that genuinely make the biggest difference, I want to pause for just a moment. If this is landing for you, if you're recognizing pieces of your own life in what I'm describing, please take 2 seconds to hit subscribe and tap that like button. It sounds small, but it's the single biggest reason I'm able to keep making these videos and keep this information free and available to people who need exactly what you're hearing right now. It genuinely makes a difference. Thank you. Now let's get into it, because things are about to get very interesting. Number 3 is beef liver. And I want to be honest with you. This is the food patients push back on most. And it's also one of the most underrated foods for rebuilding aging muscle that exists. Liver is exceptionally dense in vitamin B12 and heme iron, 2 nutrients that decline in absorption efficiency as we age, sometimes dramatically. After about 60, stomach acid production naturally decreases by a notable margin. And since B12 absorption depends heavily on adequate stomach acid, many seniors are quietly walking around with borderline B12 deficiency without ever being tested for it. That matters enormously for your legs specifically, because B12 is essential for nerve function, and your muscles are only as strong as the nerve signals commanding them to fire. Think of it like a light switch connected to a frayed wire. The bulb might be perfectly fine, but if the signal traveling down that wire is weak or interrupted, the light flickers instead of shining steadily. That's what's happening in some cases of age-related muscle weakness that get mistaken for pure muscle loss, when part of the problem is actually nerve signaling. Liver also provides some of the most bioavailable iron of any food, meaning your body absorbs it far more easily than iron from plant sources. I recommend a modest 3 to 4 ounce serving once a week, prepared by lightly pan-searing with onions to soften the flavor, which most of my patients find far more palatable than they expect. For a synergy tip, pair it with a small portion of citrus or a squeeze of lemon, since the vitamin C again boosts iron absorption. And I'd encourage anyone on blood thinners or with a history of hemochromatosis to check with their own physician before adding organ meat regularly, simply because of the concentrated nutrient load. I want to tell you about Marjorie, 74, from a quiet neighborhood outside Sacramento. Marjorie came to me convinced her fatigue and leg heaviness were simply getting old, something to accept. Blood work showed her B12 was low, not critically low, but low enough to matter. We addressed it partly through her diet, including a weekly small serving of liver, alongside targeted movement. Within 10 weeks, Marjorie described her legs as feeling, in her words, reconnected, like the signal between her brain and her body had gotten clearer. She's since gone back to tending her rose garden without needing to stop and rest every few minutes, something she'd quietly given up 18 months earlier and never mentioned to anyone. Number 2 is cottage cheese, and this is the one I promised you at the start, because almost every patient is stunned that something this simple, this inexpensive, sitting in refrigerators across the country is genuinely one of the most powerful tools we have for overnight muscle repair in aging bodies. The reason comes down to something called casein protein, which digests remarkably slowly compared to other protein sources. Think of fast digesting protein like a quick burst of rain, useful, but it runs off before it can soak in deeply. Casein is more like a slow, steady drizzle that saturates the ground over hours. Because muscle repair and rebuilding happens substantially during sleep, and because older adults experience a longer overnight fasting window with nothing to fuel that repair process, a slow-release protein before bed provides amino acids to your muscles throughout the entire night, instead of leaving them stranded for 8 hours with nothing to work with. Research on older adults specifically has shown that consuming a slow-digesting protein before sleep can measurably increase overnight muscle protein synthesis rates, essentially extending your muscle building window instead of letting it shut off completely after dinner. I recommend about 3/4 of a cup to a full cup of low-sodium cottage cheese roughly 30 to 60 minutes before bed. For a synergy tip, add a small handful of walnuts because the healthy fats slightly slow digestion even further, extending that steady amino acid drip even longer through the night, precisely when your body is doing its quiet, unseen work of rebuilding what the day wore down. Which brings us to number 1, the single most powerful food on this entire list. The one I genuinely believe every person watching this over the age of 60 should have in their kitchen without exception. And that is eggs. Not egg whites, whole eggs, yolk included. And I want to correct a myth that's caused real harm here. For years, seniors were told to fear the yolk because of cholesterol concerns. But the yolk is where nearly all of the muscle-relevant nutrition actually lives. Whole eggs contain a remarkably complete amino acid profile, essentially the gold standard against which other proteins are measured. And they're one of the few foods that naturally deliver meaningful vitamin D alongside high-quality protein in a single package. That combination matters enormously because vitamin D receptors exist directly within muscle tissue itself, and adequate vitamin D has been associated with measurably better lower body strength and reduced fall risk in older adults across multiple observational studies. Some research suggests that correcting a vitamin D deficiency in seniors can improve measures of leg strength and balance within a matter of months, which is a remarkably fast return for something this simple. Beyond that, eggs deliver choline, a nutrient involved in the very same nerve signaling we discussed with liver, meaning eggs are quietly supporting both the muscle tissue itself and the nervous system commanding it to move, a rare combination in a single food. I recommend 2 whole eggs most mornings, prepared however you enjoy them, though I gently suggest poaching or soft boiling over heavy frying in butter, simply to keep the preparation itself as clean as the nutrition inside them. For timing, eating your eggs within an hour of your morning movement, even something as gentle as a short walk or a few minutes of stretching, appears to help the body make better use of that morning protein and vitamin D pairing. For a synergy tip, add a small portion of leafy greens like spinach alongside your eggs, since the fat in the yolk actually improves your body's absorption of the fat-soluble vitamins found in those greens, meaning the 2 foods genuinely make each other more effective when eaten together rather than separately. I think often of Walter, 81. From a small farming community in Iowa, a man who told me on his first visit that he'd essentially stopped expecting his body to get better, only slower to decline. We started simply, with eggs most mornings, a rotation of a few of the other foods on this list, and short daily walks. 6 months later, Walter wasn't just walking without his cane. He was back to climbing the 3 steps onto his porch without pausing to steady himself, something his daughter told me she hadn't seen him do in almost 2 years. He didn't need anything dramatic. He needed the right fuel, delivered consistently, and the patience to let his body respond. I want to leave you with something important. Losing leg strength as we age isn't a verdict, and it isn't something you simply have to accept as the cost of getting older. Your independence, the ability to get up from a chair without help, to walk through your own garden, to climb into a car, to chase after a grandchild, or simply answer your own front door without fear of falling, that independence is worth protecting. And it responds to what you put on your plate far more than most people are ever told. It is genuinely never too late to start rebuilding that strength, whether you're 62 or 92. I've watched it happen too many times to say otherwise. All the scientific references I mentioned today are linked down in the description if you'd like to look deeper into any of them yourself. If this video helped you, please subscribe because it truly helps me keep bringing you information like this free every single week. And before you go, I want to know, of these 6 foods, which one are you most surprised to see on this list, and which one are you going to try first? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and I'll see you in the next video.